Welcome to The Real News. My name is Oscar León, reporter and documentary filmmaker. This is a special report about the police force insurrection and kidnapping of the president Rafael Correa. Being a reporter in Ecuador during the last decade, I can bring some insight about what happened that day. Between 2005 and 2007, I created the documentary Third World Democracy Handbook about the fall of the third president in a row in less than 10 years. Had Rafael Correa failed, he would have been the fourth in a row in less than 14 years. Did a coup d'etat really took place on September the 30th? In order to get a better understanding of what happened, allow me to explain some necessary context. Debt traps. Living in both countries, I have found that many of the American people can relate with these words and to the experience of Ecuadorians like myself. Maybe you were one who used to pay a $800 mortgage and all of a sudden had to pay $1,600 or more because of those debt traps. Well, something very similar was what many South American countries like mine went through. Aside the 300% increase in the interest rate, private banks' debt was also transferred to the state, in a very similar fashion to what happened in September 2008 here in USA. By the end of the 90s, this economic disaster put the taxpayers in a debt trap that will last for many generations to come. Ecuador is a small republic in the Andes. Its geopolitical importance goes beyond natural wonders, raw materials, oil, and the US war against drugs. During the last century, American corporations have got the biggest piece of the pie, getting cheap raw materials and manipulating the politicians in charge, while the military, police, and intelligence agencies were closely trained by the Pentagon, in the infamous School of the Americas and other US institution facilities. It is hard for any man to rule a country with so many interests at stake like Ecuador. Many loyalties were bought, and some other leaders were dealt with in a different way. The little money collected by the state from foreign corporations was destined to pay the debt by leaders that only cared to please themselves and their powerful masters. This policy brought a lost decade upon my country. Between 1996 and 2006, 3 coups d'etat and 10 different presidents shook the nation, broke the economy, pushed the social structure and the people to the limit, and created great instability. All those governments fell because they were incapable of dealing with the profound economic crisis that followed the IMF shock therapy and the rise of privatization and globalization. And during those government last hours, it was the police who defended the regimes at all costs. Certainly, the police track record of repressive actions and human rights abuse didn't make them very popular with the citizens. At the end, it has always been the military leadership that decides who stays in the presidential palace and who gets kicked out. They act as a panic button by stepping aside or going in to take control. The army might decide who stays in the palace of Carondelet, but it is the people who elects and takes down presidents. The voice of those who took the streets and by votes the power was the need for a strong government that can take a tough stand when it comes down to defending the nation's rich resources and people. All along the Latin American continent, the voice was the same. People were rising up. And over the past decade, 13 countries have elected left nationalist tendency governments. Only Mexico, Colombia, and Peru haven't gone through that path. Rafael Correa was the natural leader of this citizens' revolution. A charismatic economist, he quickly rose to power, and once in there, he implemented many of the people's claims. Strong and charming, he achieved much in a short time. Materialized the citizens' demand for a new constitution created by a popular assembly. Renegotiated oil contracts, giving less to the big oil companies and more for the government's project. Despite prioritizing social programs over debt service, Correa still managed to rid the country of 2/3 of his crippling foreign debt, reducing it from $3.2 billion to $1 billion. He lowered his own wage to set the example. He balanced the budget and increased monetary reserve. This is especially hard in a country that has an heritage of mega crisis. Invested a huge amount of resources in social programs and infrastructure investments. This was funded through a more effective tax collection and the seizing of assets of bankers who fled the country under charge of corruption. As part of the war on drugs, United States has a military airport on the city of Manta. Its removal was a crucial point in this citizens' revolution. Correa explained why he didn't renew the base during an appearance on Democracy Now!
Military bases in Latin America, Manta expires later this year. You will not renew it. Why?
Porque sí. Why renew it? Mire, si quiere, yo lo renuevo con una condición.
Now, if you'd like, I would renew it with one condition.
Que me permitan poner una base militar ecuatoriana aquí en Nueva York.
That they allow me to set up an Ecuadorian military base here in New York.
Si no hay ningún problema en tener bases extranjeras, entonces vamos a llegar a un acuerdo, ¿verdad?
With foreign bases, then let's reach an agreement on that.
Creo que a todos los que nos escuchan eso les parecerá imposible.
I think that everybody listening is going to find that impossible.
Bueno, a los ecuatorianos también nos parece imposible.
And for us Ecuadorians, it also
de nuestra visión de soberanía,
impossible,
al menos con el actual gobierno,
on our outlook informed by sovereignty, at least with the current government,
tener una base extranjera en el suelo patrio.
To have a foreign military base on our soil.
In April 2009, I spoke to John Perkins, author of the best-selling book Confessions of an Economic Hitman. He predicted that Rafael Correa was at greater risk than any other Latin American president.
I personally think that Correa is one of the presidents in the most danger. I think Chavez is almost too visible now for us to do anything to. I mean, it'd be obvious. If something happens to Chavez, it's pretty obvious. He's also got, I think, very good protection. But Ecuador is like this key country. It has a lot of oil, and it's always been a country that when we wanted to in the United States, we could control it. And now suddenly you've got this president who not only is standing up to us, but he's a president who got a PhD in economics from one of our universities, University of Indiana, which is a real slap in the face, you know. It's like, and you can't accuse Correa, the United States can't accuse Correa of being a communist or anti-capitalist. He has a PhD in economics from the University of Indiana.
The concerns for the life of Rafael Correa are not new. This is an interview with his right-hand man and cabinet member on April 27, 2009, after he won the elections in a landslide.
Bueno, hay que cuidarse siempre, ¿no? Hay que cuidar a nuestro presidente, en eso se han tomado medidas, siempre las seguimos tomando de protección física al presidente de la República, pero no por los riesgos dejaremos de decir lo que hay que decir. Nosotros hemos tenido una posición muy clara desde la campaña electoral y algunos de nosotros desde hace 10 o 15 años en relación al papel del Fondo Monetario Internacional y del Banco Mundial, al papel nefasto en muchísimas ocasiones y en nuestro país, particularmente el Fondo Monetario Internacional, digamos, no nos ha dado consejos, nos ha hecho daño permanentemente y eso lo seguiremos diciendo aunque no les guste a muchos, aunque algunos intenten por esta razón agredir a nuestro proyecto, pero no dejaremos de decir lo que haya que decir.
After the right-wing military coup in Honduras in 2009, Correa said he thought he would be next. This threat seemed to become real last week, when President Correa was assaulted and held hostage by a few hundred policemen on strike. Was this an institutional crisis, or a foreign power's attempt to overthrow him? In the second part of this special report, we will go over what took place on September the 30th, 2010. For The Real News, this is Oscar León.